Hey everyone, Will Fleming here. Hang with me for a couple seconds before we get into the podcast. Welcome to Talk the Walk. And I just wanted to quickly tell you what this podcast is about. It's in schools. It's me podcasting with my friends in school to a group of students who I hope learn from the walking that these guests have done. I mean that metaphorically and in some cases physically. Not just people who say what they're doing, but they've done it. So in this series, in schools, I'm talking the walk with people who have walked the talk. Okay, enjoy.
My name is Akerei, Maresala-Thomson.
The co-founder of the award-winning My River app and a former police officer.
I'm from New Zealand, born in Samoa. What I do, I founded a charitable trust called the Pasifika Digital Knowledge Bank.
Samoan proverb, e whawhora le ala mea. So solutions for issues within the community can be found within those same communities.
A quarter of this room, whether you choose to believe it or not, has been sexually abused. Police attend domestic violence every 5 minutes. Every 40 seconds around the world, somebody dies of suicide. Somebody that you know, whether you choose to believe it or not, has been sexually abused. We're all walking time bombs.
Okay, kia ora, talofa rei. It's awesome that you could join us on this series of podcasts at Manurewa High. Just to give everyone context, we do have a classroom of students, and the goal is for them to kind of hear a podcast demonstrated, but to also think about how they would interview someone on their podcast, because that's coming for them. I just want to give you the chance, Ray, just while everyone's hearing and also for the video, can you just share just a little synopsis about your story so far? Who are you?
Tāra whalawa, Will, Soifo Minwea, especially to everybody here. So my name is Akerei. I born in Samoa. I was born in Samoa. I come from a small village called Rufinufi, in Upolu. And we moved to New Zealand in 1982 when I was 4. And I grew up in Otara. So I went to all my schools and sort of high schools in South Auckland. And then I wasn't too good at school. I went to several high schools, and then my parents decided that probably the best thing for me was to return back to Samoa. So I went back to Samoa at the age of 15. And then later on, so they decided to bring me back later on. I dabbled in a few different career paths. I had some good social workers that worked with me when I grew up in South Auckland, and decided to channel my energies, sort of my aggressive energy levels, onto the rugby field. And through rugby, I managed to get a contract to play rugby in France, the UK, and sort of gave me different exposure to different ways of doing things in different community groups that I'd never really considered. And so Mum got sick, and I think 2003 she got sick and she passed away, and I came back home, and my daughter was born the following year. And then the year after that, I joined the New Zealand Police, and so I was a community cop here in Manurewa and Clendon, and did a lot of work with Manurewa High School. So it's actually full circle coming back here. But yeah, I've enjoyed my time. I now sort of operate within the entrepreneurial space, getting involved in a whole lot of research, and sort of looking into ways that our communities can thrive economically, so that we can address a whole lot of educational and social sort of barriers that hinders their ability to thrive in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So.
Thank you, brother. Thank you and I've heard you say that story in multiple ways, but I think it means a lot. And what's so exciting is to be in a classroom, is to be us coming back to kind of where we've been before. And I really hope, I cross my fingers that, if I was a student, I'd love that someone's coming in and where we will end the conversation is basically you've crafted your life to be able to do what you want to do. And I think that's beautiful because it's using your skill sets, your interests, but also, talk about a mental health prevention strategy. You don't have someone telling you what to do. And I think that's so beautiful. But I want you to go back to when you were these students' ages, like around that 15, 16, 17. Like, what are the feelings you get when I'm talking about this? Do you remember what life was like for you then?
Yeah. I mean, on reflection now, I can talk sort of in a bit more detail because I'm now almost 3 times that age now. But at that time, there's a lot of things going on in your head as a 15, 16-year-old. And it wasn't really until my work in the police. So I came through, things like child sexual abuse, domestic violence, suicide, and, people in my neighborhood got involved with youth gangs and stuff, and, we're doing stupid things that you do at the time. And I think that really informed my professional career and how I pivoted my professional career, because when I did a lot of work in the New Zealand Police, I was based here at the Maresala-Thomson Police Station. So I graduated in 2005, and in 2006 there was a spate of youth gang-related homicides that took place. Out of those 8 homicides, 7 of the homicides were Pacific Island young people. And that really spurred my interest in community development. What are the things that we're good at, instead of just focusing on the bad things that we're doing? What are some of the good things that we're doing that we can tap into and transfer or transform those things into, self-employment or other opportunities like that? But what I saw at the time, which was around what I was thinking, to answer your question, is I saw that there were a lot of our young Pasifika kids that weren't coming. Like, you can track offending for most ethnic groups. So when we did when we looked into offending behaviours, we can track offending behaviours from as young as 4 or 5, where somebody might go into a shop, steal a lolly, and then gradually, as they get onto 8, 9, it might be trespass, or might be, willful damage, like graffitiing on somebody's property. And then as they get older, they move on to more severe, crimes like grievous bodily harm, things like homicides, things like that. So you can generally track most ethnic groups, but for Pacific, which is similar to how I was feeling at the time, you can't track Pacific offending behaviours because they don't exist at this young age like most other ethnic groups. You only come to know them at the age of 16, 17, the age group you're talking about. And you know what the offences are that they come to the attention of police in for the first time? It's not shoplifting a lolly. It's not trespassing. It's not willful damage. It's grievous bodily harm. It's homicide. It's real serious. So what that told me was, if I was to rewind the clock back in the mid-90s when I was 16, 17, to answer your question, how many other Pacific Islanders like me today that are going through a whole lot of those demons currently? So the short answer to your question is, there was a lot of crap that was going on in my head. I didn't want to go home. There were challenges everywhere. But I was probably one of 500 other kids at Tangaroa College at the time that was going through the same sort of emotions. So I think, having platforms like this where you can open up and talk about it, I think it helps to de-isolate perhaps other people that might be in the room, not necessarily students, but to know that, your emotions or whatever you're going through, or your experiences, are perhaps a lot more common than we think. But I think that really, my student experience really shaped my career path to where now, when I was in the police, the work that I did with the police when those homicides happened, government at the time had a knee-jerk reaction to establish these youth action teams to go out and pick up every island or Māori-looking gang member and throw them in the paddy wagon. And we argued with our bosses. We said, look, we've been doing that since we established the New Zealand Police here in 1870s or whatever it was. Look at what it's done to curb our prison numbers, nothing. And so why don't we just go and speak to the families of the perpetrators and the families of the victim of the homicides and ask them what solutions might look like for them. And then we might find some long-term solutions that are more meaningful and fit for purpose for them. But that was really the turning point for me, is that just even having like careers now, I thought that whole time I was told to learn this, because this is where, go pick onions, go strawberries. That was what we're used to. And if we can't get a job there, it's a high-vis vest, and then you're driving a forklift. And that was the what do you call it? I guess the ceiling at the time, because that's all we knew and that's all we were exposed to. But when I look at a young kid who might be doing ram raids, might be recruiting for gangs, maybe selling drugs, instead of looking at the bad things that they're doing, I look at the fact that that person's got sales and marketing skills. They got HR skills. They've got recruitment skills. They've got CEO leadership skills. How can we turn those good skills into something positive so that when they get older, they're out in the community raising their children, raising their whānau, instead of raising them from in prisons through a 5-minute phone call a month? You know, there's a difference in approaches, right? So rather than just reminding them of everything that's going bad in their backyard, why don't we look and invest our time and efforts into co-creating with them things that are meaningful to them?
And so that's part of your mahi today. You're actually working with students like Akerei to put them on that pathway to whether it's higher education or starting your own business and actually having other people pay for it.
Yeah. So when we were thinking about like, being creatives, I think when most people look at Pacific Island people or Maori people, they see just like combat sports people or rugby. You know, they see us as a warrior people. But in Samoa, I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of the other island groups, but in Samoa, orators are in high demand because whatever you know about wars that happen in the Pacific Islands, most of the wars didn't happen because we mastered the art of communication. And through the art of communication and telling stories and sharing stories, we were able to mitigate and reduce a whole lot of wars that happen across the Pacific. So most people see all the haka and all of that, but they don't see the fact that we mastered these arts and communication. And so I think, platforms like these where rather than teach new skills, we enhance the skills, because every individual in this room, I believe, have a story to tell. And so, but knowing that you have a value in your story, because now, with my role now, we used to clean the University of Auckland for 7 years. And now I'm the commercial and research advisor, bringing in money for all their research. And I develop PhD and doctoral programs where we tap into people like you, your community, to be the ones doing the research, to be the ones getting the PhDs, to be the ones standing at a conference in Germany, Russia, America, or Asia, sharing stories about the findings of your own research. So that's coming back to that whole thing around nothing about us without us. And so that's a bit about what I do now. So I connect ideas to research that then enhances the ability for you to get funding for your ideas. So we all have stories to tell. But you know how we all get together in the garage, maybe at the cover club, maybe at the church, and talk a whole lot of stories and nobody's documenting it? My thing is, there are researchers and there's billions of dollars waiting to connect with your stories. You need to start putting a value on your stories and a value on your time, so that you can use that as your value proposition, so that other people can learn from you. And so that's what I enjoy about what I do now. But a lot of stuff that I got into wasn't from, like, I'm not putting down education. I'm just saying that the education system is quite archaic and it needs to catch up. Because as the brother mentioned earlier, kinesthetic learners. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I got kicked out of 4 high schools in South Auckland, Tangaroa College, Hillary College, Aorere College. One day at Otahu College caused a big fight, and then I ended up having to have a fight with my mum, and she's won 50 of all our fights, so she's got a 100% record against me. And then they sent me back to Samoa. So clearly I had a problem. But if I go back to the example that I use of why I like to focus on what people are good at, my problem was I had so much energy, I had so much aggression, and I took that out on other students, on teachers. What some of the community cops saw in me, and some of the youth workers and social workers, they thought, well, how can we channel that silly energy that's getting them into trouble into something positive? So they got me into sports. And so through rugby, I was able to channel that energy and get paid for hurting people on the field, doing it legally, but I was still able to go home to my loved ones, my family. So that's essentially what I've been doing since my career in the police. So, but everything that I've been doing wasn't from a textbook. It was just, who's watched the movie Moana? You know, people telling her that she can't do things and she can't go beyond the reef there because there's a whole lot of dangers. There's a whole lot of dangers in anything, but you don't know until you have a go and back yourself. And that's basically what we did. I was never a technology person, an IT person, but people fly me business class around the world to speak about technology. But I didn't create the technology myself. All I do is I go and find out people's ideas, what will work for them, and then I go and use my hustle skills that I learned from the streets of Otara, the streets of Mananiwa, to go and speak to investors, JV Ventures, about how to fund community ideas. And so that's all I did. But a lot of it required a bit of sort of expertise around how you sell the story, how you sell your pitch. Because if you're going around recruiting for your gangs and selling the best tinny and and I hate to use the, illegal experiences, but I do want to highlight that some of these illegal experiences that is always taboo. We need to make connections to people about how to turn those things into good positive things. So through that, they flew me to San Diego to talk about this app that we created. I didn't create the app. All these homicides happened in 2006, where all these, there were dead, civic and Māori young people through all these youth gang issues across South Auckland. And all we did was went out and spoke to the families of the victims and the families of the perpetrators and asked them, what would you like? Then after we spoke to them, they said, well, how come there's I don't know if people remember, I think it still exists, TripAdvisor. They said, how come there's a TripAdvisor of hotels and restaurants, but there's no TripAdvisor for all these services that we only get after we've been referred from the courts or after we're referred from the hospitals? And they said, why don't you create an app for it? I said, I didn't even know what an app was. I still had a massive ass Nokia phone at the time. Then they said, well, and these were the kids. I says, well, the app just allows us to, at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning, if we're having an argument with the missus or something and I'm too embarrassed to speak to mum or dad or our loved ones, for whatever reason, I still want to be able to talk to somebody so I can mitigate the risk of me harming myself or harming others. So I said, well, that's a great idea. So from there, I just went out and started trying to find people to invest in their ideas. Anyway, long story short, nobody invested it apart from other island boys. One owned a GP clinic out Henderson, another one owned a software company. They're both Samoan boys, and I've never met islanders that own their own companies. And so this was a big experience for me. And so they sold their clinic and their company and invested in the app. And then Otago University reached out and says, hey, we've been seeing your app all over the place. And I didn't know anybody was sharing the app, but found out that Mike King and the likes of Joseph Parker and all these All Blacks were sharing the app, and it got the attention of some of the Americans and that. And then anyway, they sent me to San Diego in 2017. This was on the back of 4 years of getting no funding from Aotearoa New Zealand. They sent me to San Diego. I spoke for 10 minutes and I came back with $500,000 of funding for the app. And from that day, I realized that this whole time we've been trying to sell our stories to people that don't have money or people that don't believe in our stories. But the world is made up of 8 billion people. You don't need to convince people that look like you, speak your language, or live in your community. You need to convince the right people that have the money to invest. And so that opened my eyes up to entrepreneurship, because we're all sort of fighting over the same small pot of funding, but there are people out there that want to invest in Indigenous ideas, empowering women, empowering young people, empowering our elderly community. And so from that experience, this whole entrepreneurship buzz started going on. So they started flying us all over the world, to Argentina, to Qatar. Anyway, we were in Qatar, rolled the app out to, and this app came from South Auckland kids. All I did was, I was just the vehicle, the conduit between their ideas, team of research and data to validate the need for this product, and then the funders, investors in the community ideas. And so, so they flew us to Qatar, business class, and then the health ministry from Italy approached us and said, oh, we'd like you to come out. And so this was in February. They said, we'd like you to come out to us in September to roll it out in some of our provinces. And I think this was an idea that just came out of a problem that happened here in South Auckland, and the ideas came from the island and Māori kids. And so we came back to New Zealand in February 10th to have a break and prepare for Italy and Florida, where we were going to roll it out to the universities. And then what happened the following week? COVID. So we couldn't travel. So how the whole entrepreneurship thing came about was we were still getting paid from the Americans. So we just reached out to all the local high schools in Franklin and says, hey, we're just a bunch of island boys that sort of cracked it, with some of these opportunities with overseas. So if you've got young students that are disengaged at schools here in Franklin, but they've got ideas that can provide economic support for themselves and their whānau, we'd love to come in and run some workshops. And so I had the pleasure of having Will here involved, but within 6 months we launched the business ideas of over 48 of these young people. Then that led to other opportunities where they brought their grandparents, and then with their grandparents we designed a seniors entrepreneurship program, and then they opened up funding for their grandparents to get funding as well. And then we were finding all these churches and marae and community organisations were doing all these fundraisers, like Sausage Sizzle at might attend 6 hours, maybe only $250 from their fundraising efforts, and there's 6 of them. Get rained on, sun on, and they get sick, miss out work, miss out school. But they don't know that there's funding available from the Laughter Foundation North for up to $100,000 just to run the programs that you're running in churches. So since then, it's just led to a whole lot of other things. But I mean, to surmise what I do, because I'm the conduit between ideas, research, and the capital. And what I love, especially over the last year, as part of my commercial and research advisory role at the Centre for Co-Created Age Research at the University of Auckland, is that I'm now responsible for creating pathways to PhDs and doctoral programs. But our office, as Will has also been to, is based at the Newmarket Innovation Precinct. And what I love about that place and how that might be of interest to students here is that the Newmarket Innovation Precinct is set to become the driving force behind the rocketry industry here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Just a month ago, we secured a contract to design AI-powered algorithm software for NASA. So part of my interest is how do we pathway some of our community into just sharing the stage with some of these people? Just this week, one of our residents at our centre just won over $1 million of joint venture capital for some biometrics development that he created. So imagine some of our students are actually having some exposure with some of those people in those spaces, because I think without those exposure, I think it's not realistic to dream that far for us.
And I guess I just want to ask you a really direct question, Ray, like, just this, put it on your kid. I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to edit that out, guys. I just want to ask you a direct question. Could students in this class be involved in that, or at least some other students you're talking about who can pathway into that? Because
big students here would be perfect. You've already got an entry point. Why can't we create a visit? I would love to host a tour where you can come and see the types of people that I surround myself with, because if we're not exposed in those spaces, how can we, diversify those spaces for your communities?
Would we need to be somebody else on that day, or can we be ourselves? Because I guess
Be yourself, because they need to learn about you. The whole thing about the universities is they may be great at theory, but the gaps in their theories and the gaps in their research is what you bring to the table. That's why I talk about value proposition. We are too humble, in these spaces, that we forget that there are missing information in a whole lot of if your contribution, if your stories are not valuable, why is suicides in the OECD so high for New Zealand?
Why do we feature at the top for high suicide rates for rangatahi in the OECD? So remember that in terms of putting a value on your time. So when researchers speak to you, you may be 16, 17. You're not speaking to them for an hour of a 17-year-old's time. That expertise, that knowledge that you're conveying back to the researcher is from many, many generations before you. You just happen to be the mouthpiece at that time. So value propositioning is very, very important now, because we need more of our people in those spaces having discussions with these people so that we can diversify their understanding, and so that we can also influence relevant policies and strategies that can help enhance our participation in the rocketry industry and the technology industry. I mean, if we take one of the things that we're working on at the moment, because less than 4% of Māori Pasifika work in the IT industry, less than 1% actually own their own IT company, less than 0.1% actually have a bricks and mortar, like a physical office space. We happen to be in that 0.1%. So we need more of our people in those spaces owning and controlling and be the masters of those spaces so that it can make, tangible connections to people so that they can see, that their ceiling is a lot higher than other people, make them think. If I was to go back to that experience in San Diego with the technology, there was a Swedish professor that spoke before me that got up and did the icebreaker. Now, this conference was called the International Violence, Abuse and Trauma Summit that I went to speak at about the app. The professor that got to speak before me did the icebreaker. He's blonde hair, blue eyes. He got up and his icebreaker introduced his icebreaker by asking the room full of 1,500 professors and doctors from around the world. And here mixing amongst all those professors and doctors was a guy that got kicked out of 4 high schools and sent back to Samoa. He asked the question, who are the greatest navigators in the world? Who went around the room. Anyway, a couple of minutes later, everybody got it wrong. I was sitting in the back of the conference. The conference, I said, was full, 1,500 people. And I was sitting in the back with about 3 other American Samoan ladies, one from Tonga and one from PNG, Papua New Guinea. And we were all waiting to hear what the answer was going to be because we all believed it was our people. Sure enough, nobody got the answer right. And then the Palangi professor says, Polynesians or Pacific Islanders are the greatest navigators in history. And then he went on to play this real heavily pixelated old YouTube video. And they were interviewed all these master explorers and navigators, scientists, all doctors, professors and whatnot. And none of them were Pacific Islanders. But you know what they all said? They all said, the Polynesians are the greatest navigators and seafarers, conquered the greatest or the biggest, continent in the world. And, and recent evidence is showing that they've been to Americas and all over the place. And then to surmise his icebreaker, that professor said, to be the greatest navigators in over 3,000 years, you needed to be the masters of science, technology, engineering, and maths. So here I am as now a 30-something-year-old Samoan about to speak after this guy, had to go over there to America to be reminded by somebody from Sweden that we are from a great people, not just, onion, strawberry, potato pickers, and not just rugby players and security guards. We're actually from pretty big people in terms of what they've achieved through life. And so that's essentially been my ethos in terms of what I do now, is trying to remind our community that we're not just your regular average Joe blog. We actually come from an awesome community of scientists and all of the above. And that's why I'm quite passionate about what I do in terms of trying to drive home the message that we cannot be here in New Zealand for over 50 years just to be here. Our parents set up, they planted the seed, and that seed is what now allows people like myself and you to thrive. So don't be afraid to have a crack, because behind that horizon, behind that reef that one I was told not to go beyond, is a whole lot of opportunities that can shape, the change for your own community.
And I guess that's how it ties back in. I've suggested to the students that when you're learning podcasting, you're getting an opportunity to network.
Mm-hmm.
And so today the students have met Makia and yourself, and that is now part of the network. And I guess, it's not like everyone knows what to do with that, but it is about meeting people along the way. And it is also, I think, a little bit about being brave. And I want to ask you a question about being brave. So in some weeks ahead, our students will have to be brave to interview someone in their community. And it won't be in front of everyone. We'll set up little studios so they can have, some privacy, but you've got to ask someone a question. And sometimes that takes a bit of bravery or courage. And I wonder if you could just impart an example of when you've had to be brave in your life, because it's easy to be the humble one, the quiet one, the one who sits in the background.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're required in life to be brave and to say, I don't know how this is going to work, but I trust that Will's here, Guy's here, that we're here to kind of have everyone's back. And I guess, is there a way you can relate to that?
I mean, so I joined the police in 2005. In 2012, I went for my first job promotion to sergeant at the Ministerial Police. And I remember I had to provide my sergeant, a sergeant at the time who was encouraging me and supporting me. And I saw all the examples that he put on he gave me a template for his resume and for his cover letter. And, our people are too humble and don't want to sort of, sell ourselves. We sell ourselves when we're out at, at church and family functions, but then we sort of go from that size to this size when we're in front of something that might, be perceived as challenging. And I said anyway, I gave my draft, a cover letter and resume to my boss, and he knew everything that I did with the gangs and getting employment for the youth gangs and doing, building this app and all sorts. And he looked at my cover letter and resume and he tore it up and he goes, "Oh, you're being too humble." And, I said, "Oh, we don't like to talk a whole lot of crap." And he says to me, "Well, there's 12 other people going for that same job. You're qualified, but by you being too humble, you're doing a disservice to everybody else who's contributed to your, to developing your skills and to get you to where you are now. So if the wrong person takes a job, then you've done a disservice to them." So in that kind of way, it kind of told me, it's not about blowing your own trumpet, but it's putting forth the best version of you. So that whatever job gets rolled out, the best version of you is out there supporting and helping to build your community. And so that was going back to 2012. But even like taking up the commercial lease because challenges are going to exist. You're never going to be satisfied with, in entrepreneurship, there's always new challenges and opportunities. And so in 2020, after COVID-19, everybody was running away from commercial lease. And being a businessman, I just made a decision after looking at some of the stats. We had 400 young people that had no further education access down in Pukekohe because we don't have AUT, MIT, Te Wānanga Aotearoa. Our trains were down for 2 years now, going on to 3 years. And so I saw that as an opportunity. And the only way we can actually provide an opportunity was to provide a space in Pukekohe that can cater for the diverse needs, educational needs of our community. And so we just took a gamble and took up a long-term lease of the biggest office space in Pukekohe. And we had no money, but we just decided to go with it. And now we're okay. We've secured enough funding, but we also are creating employment opportunities. We've launched over 50 Pacific Island businesses and 50 Māori businesses down in those communities. And now we've got the likes of universities and ministries coming, asking us and contracting us to run governance training, run financial capability training. And again, all the skills that I've learned to do those things didn't come from the universities. They came from hustling at the tuck shop, hustling out on the streets in South Auckland. But I had the right people around me to provide the infrastructure, to provide the right mentoring, coaching and pastoral care, so that I'm out in the community raising my children, raising my family out in the community, rather than from behind, prison bars with the 5-minute phone calls a month.
And I guess I'd just remind students here today that, you have that now too, right? We've opened up that network. So, Ray, just before we kind of wrap up with my last question, I just remind everyone that's coming to the time where you're going to have to show some courage to ask your question. Remember what I said at the beginning? I'll do most of the heavy lifting, but you are required to, think of something in this chat that you would like to ask Ray about. And I think that's a very good preparation for your coming podcasts in a few weeks. But Ray, just finally, 1, what's it like to work for yourself? 2, what would some advice be for these students about talking to their families about wanting to chase a dream? There's a tremendous amount of pressure on all our school people to go and work because we're in a cost of living crisis, right? Yeah. So if you could talk to that.
I think the greatest thing to ever happen to our community, especially those from Māori, Pacific, rural communities or vulnerable communities, is COVID-19 and artificial intelligence. Say what you will. And I just come back from a conference in Las Vegas on artificial intelligence, where I just met ordinary people like me working in different industries, not necessarily the public sector, but they've used AI not as something that hinders progress, but as something that can elevate and enable progress, but also allow people to connect and do better. See, with all the government changes going on and cutting back on a whole lot of traditional funding, the opportunities now, I think it's a good thing, because it means that instead of working in silos, people that are surviving in this current climate now are the ones that are collaborating their resources and are collaborating for bigger multi-year funding. For those that, especially from church communities, because I know there's a lot of pressure from churches, but what I've been doing with a whole lot of churches recently is getting churches to do a stock take. So if you've got 50 members of your church and some of them are youth, there's a huge decline in our youth going to churches because of the financial burdens and a whole lot of other things. But the churches can act as your social and economic impact center, because by doing a stock take on all the skills, you can write up collaborative grants that can actually fund things like, camps, educational workshops where you go away on retreats and learn about the culture, learn about language, but also learn around, about innovation and some of the tools and resources that are available currently at your, disposal, to help enhance your current situation at the moment. One of our more popular workshops in the community is called AI for Social Good. Just in the last 2 years, we've secured over $5 million for community organizations. Some of them are not even entities. So these could be you. If you're spending 10 hours a week on social media liking somebody else's post that's not having any economic return back for you, why don't you use 1 hour of your time to learn about some of these tools that can help elevate economic prosperity for you and your whānau as well, because you've got the time, you've got the skills, you've got the knowledge that a lot of universities lack. But in terms of confidence to ask questions, it's all part of growth. Your confidence, use it. If you're confident on the rugby pitch, apply that confidence into a career that you love.
Beautiful. So we're about to hand over to our students. Ray, thank you as always for doing this. If I could just ask everyone just a little round of applause for Ray. Thank you.